Hello everyone, and welcome to the final episode of my technological-based series, Nostalgia Paradise. It has been an amazing experience, taking a look at old PCs from the XP to Vista to 7 and 8 eras, its updated 8.1, and now Windows 10. In a few instances, we've even covered the latest release, Windows 11, with possibly a Windows 12 coming at some point in the near future. October 14th, 2025 has came and went, which means Windows 10 is now officially dead, meaning it is no longer receiving any sort of security updates, well, for free that is, which leaves Windows 11 as the only free supported version of Windows left, particularly 24H2 and 25H2, along with the Enterprise and Education editions of 23H2, and the remaining editions of 22H2 have lost support as well. 23H2's Home and Pro editions will be losing support next month. Office versions 2016 and 2019 have also lost support, and with Windows 11 being 64-bit only, Windows 10 was the last release of Windows to have a 32-bit edition, which also means that 32-bit hardware is no longer supported. So, in this final episode of Nostalgia Paradise, we are going to take a look as to how I prepared my PCs for the end of Windows 10, and what the future of each of them have. Let's get started. We begin with the very first PC that I had as a personal owner. This is my Dell Inspiron 5755 17-inch laptop from 2015. I got it as a Christmas gift that same year, and by then I did not even know that Windows 10 was even a thing. I only realized it after I turned it on for the first time. It has an AMD A8 processor, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and a whopping 2 terabyte hard drive. Now, unfortunately, this is not the original installation from the factory, and the recovery information has long since disappeared. That is because I had to replace the hard drive in this thing 3 times over the course of my time using it. The first time was in 2017, the second time in 2019, and then this is going to be the third time I'll be replacing the hard drive. That's because I'm going to be upgrading it to a solid-state drive, which was something I have done with a lot of other PCs throughout the course of the series, and I am very amazed at how well they're performing on these kinds of drives. And I feel like this was a move I should have made with this PC a long time ago, and now we're going to give it the makeover it deserves. It is currently running Windows 10 Home version 20H2, the second major feature update in the year 2020. It was after that update was released that I ended up buying a new PC, and afterward this PC was retired and it has not been updated since then. But in fact, I am actually going to put Windows 11 on this thing. Why is that? Well, it turns out that after the installation, I downloaded the PC Health Check app from Microsoft and ran checks on it, and I was surprised to find out that it met almost all of Windows 11's system requirements except for the processor. This was the same case with the Dell XPS 9343 after I updated it to the latest release of Windows 10 and its maximum security updates soon after I got it. And this will be the same treatment that it will be getting later on in the episode. So right now, I'm downloading the Windows 11 image file from Microsoft, and now I'll burn it to this Windows 11 USB that I created with a tool called Rufus. And although you can't see it, I am going to use this tool to burn this modified Windows 11 ISO file to the USB, which removes the system requirement checks, the Microsoft account requirement, and skipping the privacy questions during the setup, and you'll see later. With the new hard drive now installed, I'll take a post-it note and write down what OS is on the drive and which computer the drive was originally in. That way I know that if that SSD fails, or if I want to put the old hard drive back in at some point, I'll know which computer it goes to. So now it's time to close the cover, plug in the power cord, and let's boot it up. And since there is no OS on the drive, the computer immediately boots to Dell's Support Assist Recovery diagnostic utility, and it says hard drive not installed. So when I was taking the other one out, I must have unplugged one of the connectors. So I'm going to have to go back into the PC and reconnect it. So after going back through the hard drive caddy and reconnecting its ribbon cable to the motherboard, I turned the PC on, plugged in the Windows 11 USB, and tried to boot from it. And there it is, the Windows 11 logo in all its glory. And even though that is USB 3.0, it took a very long time to start. And then finally, we arrive at the Windows 11 setup screen. As you can tell, that is the new experience that debuted with 24H2. And there is the license agreement there. Now, after this point, it would check to see if the PC was compatible, but because I modified it with Rufus when I burned the USB, it skips that part and goes straight to the drive selection screen, in which, as we can see, the internal hard drive does not display. We still have our UEFI partitions, well, basically both partitions that are on the USB. So I'll have to go back into the PC once more and try to fix the cable again. So after fixing the hard drive cable based on service documentation, I turned the PC back on and the system test started immediately, and it did not come up with a hard drive error, so that means the hard drive was successfully connected. And here's the BIOS to confirm it. You can see HP SSD, so the hard drive was successfully installed. And now we are ready to boot back into the Windows 11 USB to actually begin the installation. And this time when we get to the disk screen, the internal SSD now displays as 476.9 gigabytes, although that is a 512 gigabyte drive. Clicking on next didn't actually do anything. I had to click on the SSD, then create a partition, and then we get to the ready to install screen. It has already matched the edition that was originally on the machine, and it already says keep nothing, even though nothing was already on the drive anyway. So now we just click install, and now the installation procedure begins. So, after 15 great minutes of watching a very buggy Windows 11 update install on this 2015 PC, we finally get to hear its signature startup sound. And the animation was quite slow, let me tell you that. It was as slow as it was when I installed this on that Lenovo ThinkPad. Actually, multiple ThinkPads, both of the ThinkPads I have. But anyway, the setup process pretty much has remained unchanged. You're still asked for your country or region, and your keyboard layout. And this is the part everybody hates, where you have to connect to the internet. But, as you can see, we have the option that says, I don't have internet, and you can skip the Microsoft account requirement this way. And see, it just goes straight to asking us for a local account. You just go through the usual procedure like so. You just type in your username and provide a password, which I have in this case. And this is the part I hate most about local accounts. You're asked to provide security questions, but only on this local PC if you forget your password. And then after that part, you're not asked about location settings, telemetry, and other stuff that Microsoft likes to collect, and it just goes straight to preparing the desktop for the first time. And here's the desktop. As you can see, Windows Spotlight is already the background by default, unlike all the other versions of Windows 11 prior to this. Now, all that's left to do is install Windows updates and drivers. But first, I would like to see if this copy of Windows 11 is actually activated, because I found out that Microsoft had recently blocked 7 and 8 keys, both retail and OEM, from being used to activate Windows 10 and 11. And as we can see, this copy is activated because this product key that was originally on this PC was for Windows 10, which qualifies for Windows 11. And then after all the updates and drivers were installed, I went ahead and put this thing back into storage until I can find a use for it. Now let's move on to the next one. Next up, we have 2 Dell Office PCs as part of their Optiplex line. In this particular case, I have the Dell Optiplex 3060 Micro and the 3060 Small Form Factor. These 2 PCs are replacing a majority of the laptops that we have covered in the series, including the HP ProBook, the Dell Vostro, the Dell Latitude, the Lenovo ThinkPad, and the old Dell Inspiron 5520. All 5 of those computers have had their hard drives wiped one by one, and those have been salvaged as backup drives for use in the future. To do this, first, on the Dell Vostro and Lenovo ThinkPad, I removed the Bitdefender subscription from both of those devices. Then I booted into a Windows 10 USB, went through the installation as normal, but then once we reached the hard drive partition screen, I deleted every single partition on the hard drive, including the factory recovery partitions and any other ones that remain, until there was nothing left, making the data on all those hard drives 100% destroyed. I repeated that procedure for the other PCs, except those did not have any sort of third-party antivirus on it. Now with those PCs out of service for good, it's time to bring the twin Optiplexes into service. Before I reset these PCs, I thought I'd make a few quick hardware upgrades. Let's start with the Optiplex small form factor. This PC comes with an 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor clocked at a base speed of 3 GHz. It has 8 GB of RAM and a 1TB SATA SSD. And that SSD was made by none other than Smaznug. Yeah, that's how DankPods likes to interpret Samsung. I recently salvaged a separate 4GB DDR4 stick of RAM from an HP MT280 business PC that had an Intel Core i5 7th generation processor, which does not meet the minimum system requirements to run Windows 11. Thankfully, this PC can run 11, as 8th generation is the minimum supported Intel processor that can run the newest Windows release. I feel that 8 GB of RAM is too little for a powerful OS like Windows 11, so I feel that a little more RAM will definitely boost performance in some way. So, after I salvaged the stick of RAM, I threw it into its second RAM slot, closed it up, turned it on, and checked the BIOS to make sure that the second stick was detected, and it was. And to be clear, you can mismatch sizes of RAM. You can have an 8GB stick and a 4GB stick, as in this example, to make 12 GB. However, if the speeds of the RAM sticks are different, the computer will default to the lowest speed, which could affect performance. Booting into Windows, the specs show up correctly, the 12GB stick of RAM and the 1TB SSD that was already in there. So one hardware upgrade down. Now we turn our attention to the Dell Optiplex 3060 Micro, which also has an 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor, but the base clock speed is only at 2.1 GHz. This PC originally came with 8 GB of memory, just like the small form factor, but it had a 256 GB NVMe solid-state drive instead of a SATA drive. This would replace the Inspiron 5520 as a travel PC, because the tasks that I performed on that other machine aren't really that capable. In most cases, whatever I had running inside of the program would terminate itself, or Windows would just terminate the entire program altogether to save memory, which was a huge headache. So, to make this PC as capable as possible, I have given it potentially the biggest upgrade I have ever given a PC. I took the 256GB drive out, and I threw in a 1TB NVMe solid-state drive, the largest storage of that drive size that I have encountered by far. Even before I took that PC home, I upgraded that thing to an unbelievable 32 GB of RAM. That is absolutely powerful. To accomplish this, one 16GB RAM stick came out of two brand new, refurbished Dell Optiplex 7010 micros that each had 32 GB of RAM. I was thinking that 32 GB would be too much for that business, and that 16 GB would be enough to do the job. So I went ahead and did such, and it turned out perfectly. And there's more to it. I also threw in the 2TB Seagate Barracuda 5400 RPM mechanical hard drive that was inside my Dell Inspiron 5700 laptop from 2015 that we earlier replaced with an SSD and put Windows 11 on it, although it doesn't meet the system requirements for it. The 1TB SSD was already blank, so I booted to the 2TB hard drive, wiped the installation of Windows 10 Home 20H2, then threw it into the micro, So when we put it all together, it is an unbelievable 3 terabytes of storage. Now, there are actually some benefits to this. The main benefit of this is that if the Windows installation ends up getting corrupted at some point, then I won't lose any of my files. All I would just need to do is reinstall the OS to the Windows drive, and all the programs and all my data will still be there. Isn't that nice? But now that we have this so-called supercomputer put together, now it's on to the recovery of both of these machines. The first step of the restore process on these Dell machines is to go to Dell's website and download the Dell OS Recovery Tool, which has very similar behavior to Microsoft's Media Creation Tool for both Windows 10 and Windows 11. However, the only difference is that you have to install this program on your computer. It does not run in a portable format. So after we install the program and then run it, we are greeted with this question if you would like to help improve the OS recovery tool. In this case, I chose yes. And now here comes the fun part: choosing which computer you want to create recovery media for. To do so, you would need to input the service tag of the computer you wish to restore. If you have a Dell PC and you're running it on the PC you want to restore, you could choose this computer. In this case, we're going to do it for another computer. To do so, we will need to enter the service tag of that other PC. For desktops, you'll find the service tag on the sticker on the top of the machine, and for laptops, you'll find it on the bottom, either on a sticker or embossed into the bottom cover. In this instance, we are using the recovery media for the Dell Optiplex 3060 small form factor. I did do the same procedure for the Micro, but the process is identical. So, after putting in the service tag, we are greeted with the best recovery option, which is Windows 11, recommended. Since this is a newer PC, we have the option to have the entire installation automated by Support Assist OS Recovery. What it will do is it will not only install the OS, but it will also install the factory programs such as Dell Support Assist and Dell Update, as well as the drivers that originally came with the PC. Now, if we go to Advanced Recovery, we get all 3 possible options: Windows 11, which I just briefed on, as well as the Support Assist version of Windows 10, and just your standard plain install of the OS. That does not come with any drivers or factory programs. You would have to do the whole process yourself after the installation. No one would want to do that, right? So, we're going to do what was recommended for the PC, which is Windows 11. And now we need to choose the medium in which to put the files on. Now, it's best to use a flash drive that is 8 gigabytes or larger. In this case, I'm using the Windows 10 Lexar flash drive, which I did later rewrite Windows 10 to with its latest security updates. We also have to check this box right here that warns us that everything on that drive will be lost forever. Knowing that this is the case, we will click Download, and now this will start downloading the Support Assist OS recovery files. When that's finished, it will then write those files to the USB drive. So, the USB drive has been made. Now it's time to go over to the computer in question and start the restore. We'll plug our newly created flash drive into an available USB port on the front of the computer. We'll turn on the machine and press F12 to pull up the boot menu. Now we'll scroll down to the USB drive and we'll boot to it, which will load up Dell Support Assist OS Recovery. After the utility loads, the program is asking for access to the system information to help troubleshoot the problem and improve future support scenarios. We will click Approve, and then we arrive at the main screen with 4 options. We can run a hardware test to see if there's any issues with our hardware. We can back up files from here. We could do a repair without doing a reset, or just doing a full system reset, which is what we are going to do. Now it will ask us what image to restore. The only option we have, since we burned this to a USB, is download off the network. Interestingly, even though it said Windows 11 on the recovery tool, it still pulls down the build number of Windows 10 22H2. So after seeing it, I've decided that we'll just let this install Windows 10, and then after the installation is complete, if it offers Windows 11, upgrade to Windows 11. If it doesn't do 11, then I will do it after the installation completes. So that is what we will do. We will install Windows 10, and we'll click Next. Now it will ask us if we would like to back up any files. The drive in it is already blank, so we will say no to backing up the files. And now we are warned that the reset will delete everything on the drive forever and it will not be recovered. And we'll just click yes to continue. And now we have one final confirmation. We have to check one final box that says the reset will delete the system data and any personal files. To make the experience better, they've also added a drop-down list with reasons as to why we are restoring the system. The reason why we are doing this restore is that I was given this PC. They didn't want it. So all that's left to do now is click Next, and then we have to choose the drive where to install the files. Now this footage was recorded before I installed the second hard drive, so only the internal SSD is shown. So we'll select that and click Next. And now the actual restore process will begin. But first, because we are doing this over the network, it's going to first download the Windows files using the internet connection. Once all the files have been downloaded, they will then be installed to the hard drive. that process only took about 45 minutes and a shortened out-of-box experience. Here we are at the desktop of a fresh Dell installation of Windows 10. And right away the Recovery Assistant launches, which guides us through the final step of the recovery process, which is to install all the programs that did not come with the computer previously, as well as update the drivers and the operating system, and restore any data that was backed up before the start of the recovery. I decided to skip setting up with the network connection because Windows 10 gives you that option, unlike Windows 11, which would allow me to create a local account instead of being forced to connect to the internet and setting up the system with a Microsoft account. So after connecting it to our network and uninstalling the Support Assist Recovery Assistant, I plugged in my Windows 11 USB and started the upgrade. Once it was all ready to go, all that was left to do was click install, and now we wait another half an hour while it upgrades to Windows 11 Pro. About another 25 minutes later, we arrive at the Windows 11 desktop. Right away, it has set the background to Windows Spotlight, which is the new default in Windows 11 24H2. I went ahead and connected it to the internet, so Dell Command Update, which is Dell Update for business machines, can download and install the latest drivers for this PC. After I did the upgrade, I noticed a big problem. When I looked at the About section, I was on the wrong security revision. The build number was 26100.1742, which is a security revision from September 2024. By that time, 24H2 had only been available on Microsoft's new Copilot Plus PCs, as the following month was when all other computers would receive the update. However, this was a very problematic feature release as a whole, as there were numerous problems over the months that followed. Eventually, Microsoft worked to fix a lot of them, and there were a few issues that still have not been fixed since day one. But when I did Windows Update, it pulled down the very same package that was already installed. So I downloaded the July 2025 security update from the Microsoft Update Catalog and installed that update. I first tried to install it by running the executable MSU file, but that took forever to even start. So then I put that package through DISM in the command line, and while the package did successfully install, checking Windows Update again, it also pulled down that very same update. So while I was installing programs, I just went ahead and let it go. When it was ready to restart after several hours, I went ahead and let the PC restart. But I noticed something odd. It got to like 30% and then went down to 15%. Eventually it got to the point where I had to force shut down the PC, but then it tried to boot and it didn't. Once it was able to undo the update, I tried System Restore, yet that took forever. After all of that was said and done, I recreated the Dell recovery tool, updated the Windows 11 USB, and did the restore again. This time, it all went off without a hitch, and I was able to get all my programs installed and a fully working copy of Windows 11. So that takes care of the Octoplexes. Next, we turn our attention to the Dell XPS 9343, a 13-inch laptop that was manufactured in 2015. It comes with a 5th generation Intel Core i5 processor, 8GB of RAM, and a 128GB NVMe SSD. What interested me into this laptop was both this and my Inspiron 5700 were manufactured in the same year. I checked the Windows 11 requirements for both of these PCs, and both came very close. They both met nearly all of Windows 11's requirements, except for the processor. Over the past several months, this laptop had been receiving a bunch of Windows 10 end of support notifications. The first one I had gotten was about Windows Backup, which is a tool that you use to back up all your data and sync it with the cloud. The second one that I recently got was a more generic one, just telling you, hey, this computer's not capable of doing 11 and support is ending soon. But Microsoft had decided to do something they had never done before. Because Windows 10 is still high in market share after the StatCounter July 2025 report of Windows desktop releases, Microsoft is deciding to extend support for one more year. And now I'll show you how I was able to get another year of updates on this PC. So here we are with this PC in mid-September. As you can see, the Windows 10 end of support notification has finally showed up in Windows Update. Microsoft had actually began rolling this out in July of this year, first to the Windows Insider program, and then the following month to Stable. It only took about a month for me to finally receive this. Clicking on Enroll Now pulls up this message that reminds us about the end of Windows 10 and how getting the Extended Security Updates program will give you more time to either complete the transition to Windows 11 or switch to a whole new platform altogether, like Chrome OS, Linux, or Mac OS. Then you'll be prompted to sign in with your Microsoft account. Yes, a Microsoft account is required to sign up for the ESU program. After signing in to my Microsoft account, it already tells me that I've backed up my Windows settings. Now this was because after I saw how the Extended Security Updates program requires a Microsoft account, I had already linked a Microsoft account to this PC and then later converted it back to a local account. Which you can do, however, but Microsoft had acknowledged that you will need to sign in with your Microsoft account every 60 days in order to continue to receive these extended security updates. When the program was initially announced for consumers in 2024, it was originally going to be just one payment of $30 for just 1 year. However, in June of 2025, Microsoft had added 2 other free alternative options for enrolling in the ESU program, both of which require a Microsoft account. As you can see here, one of those methods was backing up your PC to the cloud. The other was if you had 1,000 Microsoft Rewards points on hand, you could redeem those to get the ESU updates free of charge. I actually praise Microsoft for that decision because I personally do not want to spend $30 on keeping this PC going for another year, and also because Windows 10 still holds 40.5% of the Windows desktop version market share as of September 2025, according to StatCounter, just months after Windows 11 finally surpassed Windows 10. So all that's left to do now is click Enroll, and that's it. Now I can keep my Dell XPS going for another year while I decide its future. And now, let's take a trip down memory lane showing my experiences with Windows 10. My first experience with Windows 10 came on Christmas Day of 2015 when one of my grandparents got me a new laptop, a Dell Inspiron 5755. When I turned that PC on for the first time, I was expecting Windows 8.1 as that had been out for a few years. But after the out-of-box experience loaded, I was greeted to Windows 10. So I went through the setup, and then over the next hours, days, and months ahead, I played around with Windows 10 and got acquainted to its new features. This was how Microsoft shaped the future of Windows. They initially called Windows 10 as the last version of Windows, as they would just release subsequent feature updates. They would actually do so twice a year with Windows 10. And as I continued using that PC, I actually followed along with their developments, as they added new features and changed some of the core functionality of the OS over the course of time. I had actually used this PC all the way up to version 20H2, which would be one of the last major feature updates that Microsoft would do with Windows 10 before breaking their promise on the last version of Windows and creating Windows 11. By that point, I needed a new PC, and it was for multiple reasons. The first was it was pretty slow. I had been living with a thrashing mechanical hard drive for 5 years, and it had failed 2 separate times. The first was in 2017, the second was in 2019, which pretty much at that point was the last straw. I furthermore appreciate that decision because it would not meet the minimum system requirements for Windows 11, specifically the processor, as we've covered earlier. The unveiling of Windows 11 actually came just a few months after I got its replacement, the Dell Inspiron 7506 2-in-1 laptop PC, with 12GB of RAM, an 11th generation Intel Core i5 processor, and 512GB of solid-state storage. And with this being a 2-in-1 PC, it also has a touchscreen, and I can flip it into a tent form. I was actually introduced to this form factor by my school's replacement laptops. They were Dell Latitude 3189s, and later on, they would get 3190s. All of which had Intel Pentium processors, 128 gigs of storage, and 8 gigabytes of RAM. Those actually came with Windows 10 Education, and it would be my first actual total experience with Windows 10 in the education sector. I had heard about all of the complaints that people were having over Windows 10, essentially with its forced updates, not giving you the option of choosing, no, this is not convenient, it just doesn't care, it will just restart anyway whenever it wants to, whether it's convenient for you or not. Over time, Microsoft had addressed everyone's complaints and introduced active hours, and the ability to pause updates entirely for a set amount of time. both of which were essential features that were carried over to Windows 11. I actually praise those features furthermore, and I use those on a regular basis. Active hours tells Windows Update not to restart the PC within a certain time window, as the PC is used regularly. The pause updates function does what it does. It stops all Windows updates from coming down within a certain amount of time. And speaking of Windows updates, when going from the Fall Creators Update to the April Update, I actually found a big flaw in how the school's Active Directory system configured Windows Update. On my own personal school user account, it would still let me install feature updates, despite me not being the administrator. And of course, the school did not like that. They have, however, been pushing security patches out through the school's software center with Microsoft Azure. As time went on, both the school and I moved forward with each new version of Windows 10. Going back to my old laptop, considering how slow it was, I needed a much faster companion. That led me to the Dell Inspiron 3670, which has an 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor and 12 gigabytes of RAM. I was interested in a desktop PC, so we went to Best Buy during that time and we picked it up. And since that purchase, it has been working very reliably for me. Fast forwarding to 2020, when, you guessed it, COVID shut down pretty much everything, my school district had been devising plans on virtual learning, essentially joining Zoom meetings from home. How would they accomplish all this? Well, they ordered brand new Dell Latitude 3190s with Windows 10 Education already pre-installed, with both the factory apps from the manufacturer and the information to join the machine to the domain upon setup. After these were all set up, they would be packed up in their original boxes along with bags of school supplies, and then have every family with their students come to the school and pick up their own personal items. Along with those PCs was a setup sheet that basically goes through the usual Windows 10 setup instructions, plus signing into the school account to join the machine to the domain, and then it'll automatically install all the programs upon completion. What was interesting about this, though, was that the Windows Update potential was completely unlocked. I was able to install all security updates through the Windows Update page, just like on my personal computers. And this is where I started to establish a personal routine for Windows and driver updates. Do them over the weekend. That way I can reduce downtime with my own personal machine during the school day. That was during my sophomore year. It was the second half of my freshman year when everything was shut down and the school just had us fend for ourselves. During the second half of my sophomore year, people were given the option to come back in person. I chose not to and wait until they made everyone come back in person the following year. It would be the last 2 years of high school, junior and senior year, where the school would adapt a hybrid format, do in-person lecture, and have most of the work be distributed online through Google Classroom, as by this point, my school district was beginning their transition away from Microsoft and to focus more on Google-based services. Soon after I graduated high school, later in 2023, the district would complete their transition to Google-based services. At one school, they started testing Chromebooks, Chrome OS-based devices. With the test being proven successful, they started rolling that system out completely across the board. So, now in 2025, my school district now uses Chromebooks. What about my college, on the other hand? Well, for the past year and a half, they had been continuing to use Windows 10, as they, along with other organizations, continued to prepare for their transition to Windows 11. They would actually partially transition in 2024, starting with some of the public PCs, but not any of the Cisco and Cybit lab computers until later. The Cisco lab would receive the replacement desktops first, as those PCs were not compatible with Windows 11. As for the PCs in the Cybit labs, they were HP Z2 workstations with an incredible 32GB of RAM, a 2TB NVMe SSD, and a 10th generation Intel Core i7 processor, which was compatible with Windows 11. In the last months of my 2024-25 fiscal school year for college, I, along with many other of my classmates, have began receiving notifications about the end of Windows 10. Not as a full screen pop-up though. However, as a notification, those labs would receive Windows 11 over the summer. By that point, the transition to Windows 11 was complete. Also, after I graduated high school in 2023, I was offered a part-time summer job at the St. Joseph School in Downers Grove, which is pretty much where the Downers Grove Row Fanning series and all the PCs that we've used throughout the series came from. I acquired the Dell XPS laptop in 2024, my second year being there, as the school got rid of devices that they no longer needed. I took some of those laptops home to try and give them new life. I had used the Dell XPS as a secondary college PC. The HP laptop from 2020 is used as my primary PC for college. Now that this is my final semester of college, I am looking to retire the Dell XPS laptop next year. A lot of the PCs that we have featured throughout the Nostalgia series I have already retired, including the Dell Inspiron 5520, the Dell Latitude E6540, and the Lenovo ThinkPads will soon follow. And as that school continued upgrading their computers, I had learned that their old Dell Optiplexes had 8th generation Intel processors in them, which met the minimum system requirements for Windows 11. And I had shifted my focus to only Windows 11 capable PCs, replacing all of those other computers that I have had that do not meet Windows 11's requirements. Although I have decided to put 11 on those PCs anyway, despite the requirements. And after I acquired all those other PCs, I had put them on Windows 10, and they had been that way until they were retired. Also there, they have an HP all-in-one desktop PC with only a 6th generation Intel processor, which does not meet Windows 11's requirements. I believe that sometime next year, that PC will be retired as well. Other encounters of Windows 10 include my mom's old HP P2 desktop PC, which shipped with Windows 8, was later upgraded to Windows 8.1 for free, and then while Windows 10 was available as a free upgrade to all Windows 7 and 8 users. And it had been on Windows 10 for the rest of its serviceable life, until it was replaced by a Dell Inspiron 3880, which, for a good few years, was on Windows 10, until the end of support notifications started coming up acknowledging the upgrade to Windows 11, considering that it meets the minimum system requirements. So those are my personal experiences with Windows 10. And now we fast forward to the eve of the end. October 13th, 2025, 15 seconds to midnight, as Windows 10 takes its last breath before the end. And that's it. As the clock strikes 12, the end has arrived for Windows 10. Later in the day, it would get its last update. And after that, there won't be any more. unless you've enrolled in the Extended Security Update program like I did. Or for those who are using one of those special Enterprise LTSC editions of Windows 10. IoT Enterprise LTSB 2016 only gets updates for another year, which ends on October 13th, 2026. Meanwhile, Enterprise LTSC 2021 ends support on January 12th, 2027, while IoT Enterprise 2019 receives updates until January 9th, 2029, and IoT Enterprise LTSC 2021 getting updates until January 13th, 2032. Other than these, devices that are still using Windows 10 after that date will be more and more vulnerable to security threats. While not immediate, the immunity will wane as time goes on. In addition to that, hardware and software vendors will stop making updates for their products for Windows 10. Some continue to provide updates for Windows 10 years after the end of support. But then there's also Zero Patch, which is a third-party service that patches running programs, not the Windows kernel. But if this is the best way to continue to use Windows 10 on the internet without support from Microsoft after the ESU program, then that would be your best choice. Because some form of protection is better than no protection at all, especially since there are so many vulnerabilities that Microsoft will likely never patch. But this end of support is special, because I've followed Windows 10 throughout its entire history, upgrading through all 14 versions of the operating system, with each new version released twice a year, and getting intrigued by all the new features within each. I followed through its difficult beginning, then people getting used to it over time, Microsoft addressing all the concerns people had over Windows 10, and then it got better. It got better and better with each new version, and I followed that until this very moment. So now we go on to the afternoon of October 14th, 2025. Microsoft had just released the final update for Windows 10, and this time-lapse will show that final update along with a few other updates being installed alongside it, marking the end of Windows 10. You think this is the end? Nope, we're not done yet, because I've got one more trick up my sleeve. I brought back out that Dell Inspiron laptop I've been talking about a lot throughout this episode, and I wiped the hard drive and installed a fresh copy of Windows 10 22H2 with the September security revision already installed. After installing the October security update and going back to Windows Update, there was the end of support notification I was expecting. It said your version of Windows has reached the end of support and is no longer receiving security updates. A short time later, the extended security updates enrollment message displayed right below it, which says the same thing, along with the option to enroll in the program to continue receiving security updates. But aside from that, I brought this laptop back out to give Windows 10 a final send-off. What I did was install a whole bunch of programs from a catalog called Ninite, which is a tool that can automatically download and install multiple applications at once. So I installed what I wanted to install from the catalog, and I had them all set up and will be joining us for the final act: destruction. So there you have it. That is how I prepared for the end of Windows 10 and the migration to Windows 11, which the whole process was mainly done by getting rid of unsupported machines and getting newer ones with hardware that's compatible with Windows 11. Overall, I'm happy that I made these changes up to the end of support, but at the same time, I'm gonna miss Windows 10, especially since I've followed its evolution from start to finish. And I will continue this evolution with Windows 11. And with that, that officially concludes the very last episode of Nostalgia Paradise. It has been amazing working on this series for 2 years and showing off the evolution of Windows and computer manufacturers as a whole, just to get an idea of what the computing world looked like in the past and how it shapes the future and going forward. Thank you all so much for your support on the show, as it took a lot of time and effort to make each and every single one of these for you all. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you're all excited for what's coming next.